The world is entering a new kind of arms race. But this time the weapons aren't missiles or oil. They're lithium, cobalt, rare earths, and the fight is for control over the minerals that power the future. From Washington to Beijing, Brussels to Canberra, nations are redrawing the global map through policy, fast-tracking mines, slapping on tariffs, cutting off exports and building strategic stockpiles. It's no longer just a matter of who owns the resources, it's who controls the rules. This is the new geopolitical battlefield, and the policies being written right now will decide who leads and who falls behind. Let's break down the 5 most important global policy shifts happening right now in the race for critical metals. The United States, tariffs and fast-tracked mining. In March 2025, President Trump signed an executive order titled Immediate Measures to Increase American Mineral Production, invoking emergency powers to fast-track mining permits and unlock financing for US-based critical mineral projects. At the same time, the US launched a trade offensive, introducing a blanket 20% tariff on all Chinese goods and a 25% duty on foreign-made autos and parts. Lithium-ion batteries from China, those tariffs are set to triple, rising from 7.5% to 25% by 2026. The message is clear. The US is trying to reduce dependence on foreign sources, especially China, while investing in domestic mining and recycling. But China isn't backing down. These moves triggered a swift retaliation, including fresh export restrictions on rare earths, metals essential to everything from electric vehicles to military hardware. This tit-for-tat is driving up costs for US tech firms and escalating the pressure to build supply chains at home. The European Union, going strategic with critical raw materials. Across the Atlantic, the European Union is charging ahead with its Critical Raw Materials Act, moving from concept to concrete action. Just last week, Brussels approved 47 strategic projects across 13 member states. These include lithium mines in Portugal, rare earth processing in Estonia, and battery recycling centres in France. Permitting, fast-tracked. Some projects will be approved in just 12 to 15 months. The EU's goal is bold. By 2030, they want to meet 10% of critical mineral demand through mining, 40% through refining, and 25% through recycling, all within Europe. But the EU isn't stopping there. They're exploring joint stockpiling and even collective raw material purchasing to strengthen bargaining power in global markets. In a firm statement, EU officials declared local authorities will be required to fast-track these projects. That's a clear sign the continent is done playing defence and is ready to lead on critical materials. China, export controls and global acquisitions. China, already the dominant force in critical minerals, is tightening its grip even further. It recently added graphite, a crucial battery anode material, to its export control list, following earlier restrictions on gallium and germanium, both essential for semiconductor manufacturing. And it's not stopping there. China has also moved to restrict exports of antimony and other strategic metals, many of which are critical to defense, telecommunications, aerospace, and the next-generation technology systems. As of April 2025, the country has also based exports of certain rare earths, giving Beijing even more leverage in global negotiations. But China's strategy doesn't end at its borders. The country is investing aggressively abroad, securing lithium from Latin America, funding cobalt and copper projects in Africa, and deepening nickel joint ventures in Indonesia. With an estimated 60% of global production and 85% of refining capacity under its control, China isn't just competing. It's reinforcing a near monopoly and turning it into geopolitical power. Australia, tax breaks and trade leverage. In February, Australia passed a landmark law offering a 10% tax credit on processing costs for 31 critical minerals, part of a strategy to become a reliable, independent source of materials for global markets. Their goal? Build onshore refining capacity for lithium, rare earths and nickel, and reduce dependence on China. But the legislation hasn't been without debate. Opposition leaders called for looser environmental and indigenous consultation rules to speed things up, while the government insisted on maintaining safeguards. Beyond tax incentives, Australia is now considering a strategic reserve of key critical minerals to insulate itself from global shocks. And here's where things get geopolitical. Facing US tariffs, Canberra sent a clear message. If trade terms aren't fair, Australia will diversify exports toward Europe and Asia. This is Australia flexing its mineral muscle, turning resources into diplomatic leverage. Canada. Strategy and infrastructure. Finally, we turn to Canada, where critical minerals are becoming central to both domestic and foreign policy. At the PDAC mining conference in March, Ottawa announced 50 million Canadian dollars for innovation and infrastructure and a massive 500 million Canadian dollars infrastructure fund to support new mines and processing hubs. They're also extending a 15% exploration tax credit through 2027, aiming to boost prospecting and development of new projects. But it's not just about money. Canada is aligning closely with allies under a coordinated Team Canada approach, working with provinces to fast-track permitting and counter US protectionist measures. With new US tariffs hitting Canadian metals, Canadian officials are preparing a response, including speeding up domestic output and expanding trade relationships outside the US. Canada has also begun screening Chinese investment in its critical mineral sector, citing national security, a bold move that reflects a growing priority to maintain sovereign control over its resources. And with Canada leading the 2025 G7 presidency, Ottawa is putting critical minerals at the top of the global agenda, calling for collective action on secure and sustainable supply chains. So what does all this mean from the US to China, Europe to Canada? Governments are no longer just observing the critical minerals race. They're writing the rules. We're seeing tax breaks and fast-tracked permits, export bans and strategic reserves, investment restrictions and trade leverage. All of it adds up to one thing: a fundamental restructuring of the global economy around the most essential materials of the 21st century. The world's supply chains are being rewritten, and policy is now the front line of power. What do you think about the critical metals race? Let's discuss in the comments below. And if you found this valuable, like, share and subscribe for more critical metals news. We're tracking these stories as they unfold. Stay tuned.